This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Broadcasting live from the Capital OTB studios, this is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow.
Good morning, I'm Seth Merrow. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to our friends also at Gulfstream for their sponsorship. Gulfstream Park champions start here. Nice racing at Gulfstream, nice racing in New York, but certainly nice racing on this Saturday at Fairgrounds, and we're going to hit on that with a couple of our guests. Michael Stidham, the trainer, has some nice runners in the stakes. He also has some nice runners on the undercard. We'll talk to him a little bit later on. Also, we're going to hit on the NTRA Moments of the Year. A dozen of them that kind of encapsulate some of the bigger stories, big races, some people who passed from the racing industry news. So you can certainly go vote, but I just thought we'd take a look at those NTRA Moments of the Year nominations as just an overall kind of review of 2018 racing. We're going to start the show off, however, with our friend Joe Kristufek. He's the paddock commentator down at the Fairgrounds. They have a great stakes card today. We will hit on all of that with Joe Kristufek up next. Happy to be joined now by our friend Joe Kristufek. Last time we talked in Churchill, but he's now made his way down to Fairgrounds. Joe, good morning.
Yeah, and I'm mixing in the grilled oyster tour with the horse racing here, man. I always enjoy my time coming down here, my second season, and a little bit more acclimated than I was last year, just kind of used to everything that's going on, obviously, including the racing. And I wasn't here for a Santa Super Saturday last year, Seth, but man, I'm glad I am this year because the card from top to bottom is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We'll jump in and look at the stakes in a minute, and I'm looking forward to it because as I went through the card, it is a phenomenal card. And I will say, one of the nice things about Fairgrounds and the length of your meet, you can put together 3 or sometimes 4 in the various divisions in a series of stakes that lead into that, Louisiana Derby day at the end of the meet. And so you get a chance to see these horses and have them square off. Up at Saratoga, we've got the 6.5, 7 weeks, and mainly it's a couple of races, things like the Whitney and then the Woodward. The 2-year-olds do have that 3-race series, but hardly anyone takes advantage of all 3. So it's mainly a couple of races in various divisions up at Saratoga. But as I say, down at the Fairgrounds over the course of the meet, you get 3, maybe 4 in a series in the various divisions, which makes it a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, obviously for the 3-year-olds, it's the Lecomte, Risen Star, and Louisiana Derby. And yeah, all the divisions, whether it's turf routing or the 3-year-old races for the girls, you can build some rivalries and you can definitely get a truer sense of the form on this racetrack.
Also want to toss in before we get to the Saturday stakes races, something from earlier this week, a couple of days ago. Certainly some prominent names down at the Fairgrounds on the jockey side and the trainer side, but one of the high percentage guys down there, Carl Broberg, his 500th win of the year.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question he does things differently than the typical horseman. I don't think he would call himself a horseman. He's more of a businessman, but he does a heck of a job of claiming horses. He's got spots picked out for these horses before he claims them. He takes advantage of the condition book like few other trainers in the country do. And I think his previous high was 420 wins. 500 wins in a single season is a massive number. He did it here at the Fairgrounds on Thursday, and no matter how you look at it, it's an accomplishment for sure.
Oh, man, a win and a half a day about it. It's crazy.
Crazy.
And also wanted to mention before we again look at the Saturday stakes races, Coming up a little bit later on the card on Saturday, race number 12, maiden special weight event. When we've had you on before, we've talked a little bit about Eskin For It, your horse with brilliant racing. Talk a little bit about that one coming up on Saturday in the 12th race.
He's run 3 sprint races against the best 2-year-olds in Kentucky. I would say
that Boldor Super Steed race was a very salty maiden special event.
Yeah, I mean, moving forward, you're going to see those names in a lot of stake races down the road. And he's held his own. You know, his pedigree is all over the place. It's sprint, it's route, it's turf, it's dirt. So we got to try everything with him. We cut back the blinkers a little bit, opened up the cheater. We're sending him 2 turns, and this is going to tell us a lot about, you know, his future moving forward. Expectations are realistic, but we're excited.
Yeah, we're rooting for you, certainly. Nice little bullet workout coming into it. Eskin For It in the 12th at Fairgrounds on Saturday. And I've noted before, I'm assuming before the 12th, we won't see you in the paddock commentating?
Yeah, no, that's just the way it goes. It's full disclosure, so Ryan Martin will do the picks for that race online. And
is he obligated to pick your horse? No.
No.
Yeah, there you go.
He didn't put us in the top 4. The Churchill guys, I think they would throw us a bone and like maybe pick us 4th or something, but he did not pick us in the top 4. And when it comes to Ryan, that might be a good thing.
Very good. Well, we're certainly rooting for you on Saturday. Eskin For It, as they say, in the 12th. All right, let's jump in because, again, a great card. And I didn't realize until I looked at your Twitter feed last night. You mentioned it already earlier. It's, a Santa Super Saturday?
Yeah, a lot of gifts under the tree, man. We got the NHC Super Qualifier going on as well. So, you know, if you're going to present the card to handicappers that are going to play in a tournament like that, this is the kind of card because not only do you have high quality, you've got depth, you've got full field, you've got square price horses you can be confident in, and potential long shots that you can sink your teeth into as well. So perfect kind of tournament card, perfect kind of card to unleash the bankroll as well.
I love that name, Santa Super Saturday, and we'll jump in. Oh, before we do, you and I were talking before we went on the air, and we're actually taping this on Friday, but you had the weather situation kind of marked out because people have been looking at Fairgrounds. The last week and a half or so, there have been some weather issues, and not just you guys, it's everybody dealing with the weather the past few months. But you said before we went on the air, it looks like things will clear up for Saturday afternoon.
Oh, man, it's going to be perfect. I mean, it was rainy on Thursday all day. We were off the turf. Friday the sun came out, windy, and then Saturday's supposed to be mid-60s and sunny. So I would say a fast main track for sure, absolutely positive. And then the turf, I'd say maybe a little give. I would say probably good on the turf course. It's not going to be super, super firm, but it's not going to be soft either side. I think it's going to be absolutely perfect conditions for racing and handicapping. No excuses for anybody.
That's what you want on a day like this. All right, let's jump in and kind of go through them chronologically. The Bonaparte, 5.5 on the grass. That kicks off the stakes action. I pulled up the Thanksgiving from November 22nd. Number 2, Win Time, is going to get this done on the front end and, come from behind victory. But Switzerland, the number 9, will run 3rd in here. They're both back on Saturday, but do note the Thanksgiving on the dirt. This one scheduled Saturday on the turf, so that may be a concern. A horse coming off the turf, though, that's maybe interesting. Mike Maker, Ken and Sarah Ramsey have Kitten's Cat coming down from the Turf Sprint Championship, running 3rd there up at Aqueduct. Ballandine also looks a little bit interesting off the win and the claim at Keeneland. What do you see in the Bonaparte?
What an intriguing race, man. You've got some legitimate speed. You've got some turf sprint specialists. You've got Win Time, who's never run on turf, but he's run well on everything. Fast dirt, slop, synthetics. He's got wins on all of those surfaces. And like you said, he won the Thanksgiving last out, so he's tough to pick against. I think Switzerland's the horse to beat, though. I mean, he has races where he seems to beat himself with full breaks from the starting gate, but he's cozily drawn outside here. You look at his pedigree, Spice Tom out of an Indian Charlie mare, and I know he did sprint on turf one other time in his career, but he's certainly bred to do this, and I just think he's going to get the right trip in this particular spot. My sleeper would be Win Lion Win, the Louisiana bred. If you go back and watch the Woodford at Keeneland, man, he ran great. He only got beat a length and a half. He rallied off heels, and like I said, that was a grade 2 race against some horses that ran in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. So at a price with leading rider James Graham aboard, that would be my sleeper.
Sounds good. 10-1 on the morning line. Let's move on. Race number 7 on the card, the Letellier Memorial, $75,000 up for grabs, 6 furlongs the distance. We're going to take a look here at Idle Hour, breaking the maiden in the career debut. This was back on November 23rd. Idle Hour will be the number 2 horse. But boy, you can make a case for maybe 4 or 5 or 6 of them in here. Adventurous Lady for Steve Asmussen coming out of the second place finish in the Zia Princess. If you're a buyer person, the numbers on that one are pretty good. The one horse Q Go Girl, also a debut winner. Bell's the 1, 2 for 2 in the career. Lady TNT was maybe a little overmatched in the Alcibiades. Unholy Alliance for Brad Cox is also 2 for 2 in the career. This is really a spectacular field. As I say, buyer-wise, maybe I would tilt towards Adventurous Lady, but as we saw there, Idle Hour off the debut win looked pretty good too, and is only going to have to step it up buyer-wise a few points. But again, I could make a case for another 3 or 4 of them with equal confidence. Your thoughts on the Letellier?
And that's the thing for the whole day, Seth. I mean, you can look and say 5 or 6 or 7 different horses have a chance to win. It's like price shopping. Which one do you like the best, and which one's going to be the best price that offers value for you? I went with Unholy Alliance here, 2 for 2. She beat a really nice horse in Carrizo last time out. She beat Easton Council in the debut, who's also involved in this Letellier. And she's cozily drawn to the outside. She's got a lot of speed to the inside of her. She's got a strong leg closing kick, and she's relentless. So Unholy Alliance for me on what could be an absolutely banner day for Brad Cox. He is absolutely loaded on the card. Bell's the 1. She's done everything the right way so far. Stock and Pound's professional victories in both of her career starts. And then Lady TNT, she was massively impressive in that allowance race at Churchill. You guys got to see her win at Saratoga in the first money only race. And she probably didn't belong in the Alcibiades. She's a sprinter by Justin Phillip out of a Salt Lake mare. She probably shouldn't see 2 turns again in her career.
Yeah, that's probably, I said overmatched, which may be a little part of it, but I think you're more onto it. The cut back to a sprint is going to be beneficial for Lady TNT. And like you, I like Unholy Alliance. And I will tout what I say when I do the handicapping show in the afternoon a lot. Your home track at Churchill Downs now. I think their fall 2-year-old races, from the maiden specials to the first level allowances and certainly up through the stakes, I think they produce nice 2-year-old races. Blushing KD, a mile and a 16th on the grass. We're going to take a look at the Falls City. Speaking of races that I think are productive from Churchill, there's a couple at the end of the season that I always watch and look for horses as they move on to other venues, and the Falls City is one of those. November 22nd, number 6, Prado's Sweet Ride will be the winner. But again, you will note this one is on the dirt. The Blushing Katie on Saturday is on the turf, but this horse has a pretty good turf record underneath. So this race shows some good form for, again, the number 6, Prado's Sweet Ride. But Beau Recall for Brad Cox looks pretty good, as does Take These Chains, potentially off a win recently up at Churchill. And I'm going to talk to Michael Stidham a little bit later as well. He's got a couple in here. Between the two, Superiority Complex looks like the better of those two. But your thoughts on the Blushing KD?
Yeah, the theme. I mean, you could talk about a couple more of them. Another great betting race. Prado's Sweet Ride, she's an Illinois bred just like me, so I've got a soft spot for her. And she made me look smart in the Fall City. I really liked her that day. I didn't expect her necessarily to go gate to wire, but she found herself on the lead, and she kept going. She's got speed, but she's not a need-the-lead type, and I think the rail draw is perfect for her. She should be able to set a pocket trip right in behind the likely pace setter on Betty G. She's every bit as good on turf as she is on dirt, as you can see by looking at the Modi back at Arlington on July the 7th, where she was second best to Daddy's Little Darling, who one could say is easily in the top 10 when it comes to filly and mare turf horses that ran in the U.S. this past year. And like I said, she's going to get a great trip from that potential pocket spot. Take These Chains. He ran a monster race off the bench for Brad Cox on November the 11th off a 17-month layoff. The turf at Churchill in November is a little bit funky, though. A lot of kickback on the grass. Some horses handle it. Some horses don't. She definitely did. She won geared down. I think she might have a little bit more to give, but, it's kind of tough to give her too much credit off the Churchill race. just based on what I said with the way the turf was. So I'm interested to see how she's going to handle the going on Saturday at Fairgrounds, but she has a massive amount of talent for sure.
I wonder what Bo Recall will go off as. 9-2 on the morning line, but only 1 win in 8 starts and hasn't run second or third this year. But again, being a buyer guy, I think those races out in Southern California might be better than they look. Potentially. A couple of finishes behind Basilica out there most recently, and now moves into the barn of Brad Cox. Again, at the 9-2, I'm not sure I'm jumping on board, but if this horse floated up a little bit, I might become interested in Bo Recall.
She's for sure. I think it's going to be a moderately paced race, which could work against that horse, but obviously she's got the class. She just seems to be pace dependent to me.
All right, let's go out to the tenacious race number 9 on Saturday afternoon at the Fairgrounds. 1 mile and 70 yards for the 3-year-olds and up. We are going to take a look at, this is fun because this is one of those horses that will be fun to watch and see what happens here in the second start of the season. Tom's Day Tot, we're going to take a look at that November 4th race. Tom's Day Tot will be the number 10 horse in here. This was off a layoff of over a year. This was again early in November. Hadn't been seen since July of 2017. But certainly the beginning of the career was productive. 5 wins and 8 starts so far, but this is a 5-year-old, a lightly raced 5-year-old, obviously, but with plenty of potential. So Tom's Day Tot will be fun to watch. But Snapper Sinclair is in here, who was playing on the 3-year-old trail down at the Fairgrounds earlier this year with a 3rd in the Lecomte and a 2nd, a close-up 2nd behind Bravazzo in the Risen Star in the barn of Steve Asmussen. Pioneer Spirit from Brad Cox, again, potentially a big day for Brad Cox, but you look underneath, a couple triple-digit buyers for Pioneer Spirit. Your thoughts on the Tenacious?
Yeah, Tom's Day Tot, great story. I mean, a lot to lay off line. We all know that Al Stahl's trained some great horses in his career, led by Breeders' Cup Classic winner Blame. But he told Ryan Martin a couple days ago for the Fairgrounds Note that he thinks talent-wise Tom's Day Tot's in the top 3 or 4 horses he's ever trained. Now, this horse obviously was massively impressive in that race on November the 4th. He only beat 2 other horses, but it was like a public workout for him. Tactically, he's got the advantage. Coming into this race, great. Could be a big weekend for GMB Racing. If the Saints beat the Steelers on Sunday, they get a first-round bye in the playoffs. So they're looking forward to an early Christmas. Tom's Day Tot's a horse to beat. My sleeper here is Colonel's Dark Temper, who ran great in the Thanksgiving prep for this for him. He ran 4th sprinting that day, was only beat a couple lengths. This is a 2-turn horse. He's got a lot of talent. He is going to use that race as a perfect springboard to this one. You get James Graham, leading rider here, 10-1 in the morning line. Colonel's Dark Temper, definitely my sleeper in the Tenacious.
All right, let's move on to the Diliberto Memorial, the Buddy Diliberto Memorial. 1 1/16 on the grass. For this one, I pulled up the optional claimer from November 24th because we have 3 coming back from that race. The number 1 is Great Wide Open. That one will win the race. Number 7, Memory Bank, runs 2nd. Number 3, 24/7, runs 3rd. And again, they're all set to come back Saturday afternoon. But there are some others in here. Pioneer Spirit, some triple digits underneath for Brad Cox and some early speed, although turf may be the question mark. There are some turf races back that are pretty good. The most recent races, however, on the dirt. Big changes, I think, for Brad Cox in good form coming out of the River City, another one of those productive races at the end of the year at Churchill Downs. Nice 2nd in that race, and Oscar nominated. It's Mike Maker and Ken and Sarah Ramsey. Your thoughts, and boy, a really competitive edition of the Diliberto.
But before I forget, I just want to give everyone a little bit of a hint, too, on the overall aspect of this card. Speaking of Mike Diliberto, he does the line at Fairgrounds, but he's also a clocker. So in some of these races where you see maybe a horse that has under-the-radar connections but might have good workouts, and you're thinking, man, this horse should be 12 or 15-1 in the morning line, but there's 6 or 8, that's Mike basically, I think, trying to tell you how well the horse is working in the morning. So pay extra attention to those because he thinks, and I'm just reading his mind, that those horses are going to take attention off how well they've been training. There's like 3 or 4 of those on this card, so pay attention to them. You'll be able to figure it out when you see it. I went to 24/7 in here for Brueggemann and Valdivia. This horse is a $30,000 claimer at Fairgrounds last March. but really legitimized himself. He ran deceivingly good races in the Arlington Handicap and the Arlington Million. Midwest Thoroughbreds winning the Arlington Million a few years ago with the Pizza Man. They pointed to that race, took some time off to get ready for the Fairgrounds meet, ran a good third in the prep, the three other then behind Great Wide Open. But that was a slow-paced race. He's going to get faster fractions to run at in this one. This was the target, not that race. He's going to improve significantly, I think, off of that run. And he's going to be a price. He's 8-1 in the morning line, one of my better plays of the day.
All right, we wrap things up on Saturday afternoon, stakes-wise, in the 11th, the Sugar Bowl. 2-year-olds sprinting 6 furlongs, and I pulled up the Hog Creek Hustle race from November 10th. Hog Creek Hustle is going to be the number 5 horse in here. Again, a little bit later on, we're going to talk to Michael Stidham. He has Assemblyman for Godolphin. But this race, Hog Creek Hustle, that we're looking at, Churchill Downs, obviously you were there and got a chance to see this. 2 for 3 in the career. A couple of wins, including this one, bookending a try in the Iroquois. Didn't get it done there, and it could be another one of those situations of just prefers the sprint distance as opposed to the 2 turns. Hog Creek Hustle off of this one looks good to me, but what are your thoughts in the Sugar Bowl?
I'm glad you brought this horse up, because in horse racing, you have a couple of different weapons. Either you like horses for particular reasons, and you're going to bet them based on how much you like them, how good the price is, and you can also be against horses. And I'm 110% completely against Hog Creek Hustle.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. On November the 10th at Churchill, that was one of the most severe, wide, and off-the-pace biases you will ever see at a racetrack. Completely not typical for Churchill. I've never seen that track play the way it played on that particular day. This horse was legitimately 12 to 15 lengths out of it on the backstretch. Closed on the outside of the racetrack to win by 2.5 lengths. He ran well, don't get me wrong, but it was more a product of how the track played, how fast the pace was. They went 45 seconds flat with the bias working in his favor, and he beat Classy John, who came back and won on Louisiana Champions Day. He beat Six Shooter, so people are going to see that in the past performances, that he beat 2 next out winners, how well he ran from off the pace, how he's 2 for 2 in his 1-turn races. But, man, I'm telling you, severe, wide, and off-the-pace bias this particular day, I'm completely against this horse.
Interesting. I like the info. So which direction are you going to tilt?
Super Speed. I know all about him. He beat us back on October the 25th, and he came back on November 24th in an allowance race as a maiden and won that race for fun. He's got a huge amount of talent. He's well posted to the outside. I think he's got the chance to have a very, very, very bright future for Larry Jones. And Super Speed for me, 4-1 in the morning line. I think you're probably going to get about 5-2, and you should be happy with that at post.
I have to admit, I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't pick that out. He came out of that Boldor Super Steed race, and again, I think both of those horses are going to turn out to be nice, and ran second into Boldor, but followed it up with a win in an optional claiming event. So got beaten by Boldor in the career debut. They both came back in an optional claimer. Boldor obviously legitimate, having beaten Super Steed, but Super Steed steps in against limited winners and gets it done pretty easily over Boldor, who Boldor, again, was well clear of the third place finish. But you have to appreciate the confidence of Larry Jones saying, why do I stay in the maiden ranks? I got a talented horse.
Yeah, exactly. And, I questioned the move when I first saw it, but hey, he won, and now he's coming back in a stakes race, so it kind of all makes sense. But just an incredible amount of talent in all these races, especially for $75,000 purses, Seth. And then obviously we haven't talked about any of the 5 maiden 2-year-old races, which are all stacked as well. So if you haven't already started to handicap this card, jump in and do a cannonball into the pool because there's so many opportunities, and you're going to get the prices that you want. Yeah,
it's a very, very nice day. And really, across the country, kind of an otherwise quiet day. So you guys have a good spot on the calendar with Santa Super Saturday down there at the fairgrounds. And, Joe, we certainly wish you well with Eskin for it. Your horse, brilliant racing in the 12th at Fairgrounds. We'll be watching that one as well. And before we let you go, just want to wish you and everyone, you and yours and everyone down at the Fairgrounds as well, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to you too, Seth, and your crew and everybody that's listening. We've got kind of a wonky schedule at Fairgrounds coming up, so check out the website. Check us out on Twitter for full details. We're racing on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, which are next Monday and Tuesday. So looking forward to it. Looking forward to Saturday, the rest of the year, and the rest of the meet here in New Orleans.
As always, Joe, appreciate it. We'll talk again.
All right, cheers.
Joe Kristufek from the Fairgrounds. Thanks again to Joe Kristufek for that stakes preview. Lots of good action, not just the stakes, but the undercard as well. We'll hit on some of that also up next with Michael Stidham. But before that, a break. We'll be back right after this.
Visit Rivers Casino and Resort, the Capital Region's only destination for live table game action and the hottest new slots paying out millions. And they're off. Horse betting is now at Rivers Casino and Resort with Capital off-track betting terminals and live tellers located just off the gaming floor at Van Slyck's. Get in on all the action at Rivers Casino and Resort.
What if there was a way to become a better horse player, to have a better knowledge of the game, to be more successful? What if there were a way to take what you've learned, what you know, and make better decisions, better choices, to know how to connect the dots? In horse racing, knowledge is a powerful tool, but not the only tool. Race results and replays, past performances and live streaming, wagering from all your digital devices. These too are important tools, and you'll find them all right here at Capital OTB. Capital OTB. Become a better horse player.
Come on.
I want sales reports on my desk by Monday.
Whoops. My bad.
Love racing? RTN brings you every live simulcast on your home television, plus live video streaming and race replays on your PC and mobile devices. To order, visit rtn.tv. RTN, a breed apart.
Happy to be joined now by trainer Michael Stidham. He's got some runners. Big day down at the Fairgrounds. We talked earlier with Joe Kristufek and kind of gave you a preview of some of the stakes, but Michael has some nice runners there on the undercard as well. Michael, good morning.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me on.
And also, as we talked to Joe, we got the word. It looks like the weather is going to moderate and be nice for Saturday.
Yeah, we had it here the last couple of days, but really, really nice today, and we're looking for a good day of racing.
Yeah, that's certainly what we'll keep our fingers crossed for, because it is a big day of stakes action. As I say, you have a couple on the undercard we want to touch on as well. But first, let's go out to the Blushing KD. That's race number 8 on Saturday afternoon. You have a couple in here. Full of Zip is coming in off a layoff, but Superiority Complex is the one that interests me, coming out of a nice win a couple of weeks ago at the Fairgrounds. We're going to take a look at that November 22nd race. Superiority Complex is going to be the number 8 horse in here. And I look, as a buyer's guy, I look at this horse and see a nice string of improving buyers in the 4 starts since making the United States debut. Is this horse coming in and improving form, as the numbers would indicate?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, she's really adapted well to the North American style of racing over here. We added blinkers in her last start, and which put a little more speed into her game, and that definitely improved her overall. So she has gone forward on both the buyer numbers and Ragozin numbers, and we're looking for another big effort tomorrow. And I think with a similar effort that she ran in her last, that she makes her very competitive in this race.
You added the blinkers. She showed that speed. It was pretty much gate to wire. You're on the outside Saturday in the 9. Will that be the game plan again, to kind of try to make the lead by the time you reach the first turn?
There's some speed inside in the 1 and 2 hole, and so we'll be forwardly placed. Whether or not we'll be on the lead will just depend on the break and how well Bravo is able to get her over from the outside. But either way, I think we'll be in a forward position, and I think, like I said, I think she's setting up for a good race.
All right, let's move on to the Diliberto Memorial. This is a fun and competitive race. Great Wide Open, a Memory Bank, and 24/7 all come out of the optional claimer last time. Great Wide Open was the winner. Your Memory Bank ran second. We're going to take a look at that. Great Wide Open is the 1 horse. Memory Bank's the number 7. 24/7, the number 3. Again, they'll finish 1, 2, 3. They're all coming back. But Memory Bank, interesting to me. Again, I'm a buyer guy when I handicap, and that was a lifetime best buyer figure in the race we're looking at here, a second-place finish. And I think we talked a little bit about the pace in the previous race. Great Wide Open in the race we're looking at, got to the lead and went all the way around. But it looks like a couple others with speed in here. Pioneer Spirit, the 4, and Big Changes, the 5, maybe can put a little pressure on Great Wide Open early. What are your expectations for Memory Bank?
Well, exactly what you said. We're hoping that this time there'll be a little company up front for that horse, which hopefully would soften him up a little bit. And our horse likes to lay in kind of a stalking spot, and he's been very game, and he's kind of an overachiever that has stepped up in his last couple of races and run big ones. So, we're hoping for the same kind of an effort. And like I say, if there's some other speed up front, it could set it up pretty well for our horse.
And as I say, I'm a buyer's guy, and that was a lifetime best buyer. I always like to ask trainers, do you use numbers as part of your training toolbox, and if so, which numbers do you rely on?
Well, I've been a Ragozin player, and I've used them for my training and picking stakes that I run in, and also for handicapping. If I'm betting, I use the Ragozin numbers for almost 30 years now.
Yeah, very good. That seems to be a kind of a consensus. All right, let's take a look out the Sugar Bowl. Annually, it's a fun race, 2-year-olds sprinting, and you have Assemblyman in here for Godolphin. We're going to see those Godolphin Silks in the replay we watch, going back again to November 22nd. Credit Swap, the number 5, is going to be the winner. Number 6 will be Assemblyman. Again, a good second-place finish. And as I say, as a handicapper myself, this is an interesting scenario. And I'll ask you, because as we handicap, we all try to read the minds of the trainers. Assemblyman started the career on the synthetic at Arlington. Then you went to Penn National, broke the maiden on the dirt. And as we see here, a nice second-place finish on the turf at Fairgrounds just a few weeks ago. What was your thought process to try this turf race? And off the good second-place finish, why are you going back to the dirt on Saturday?
Well, to be honest with you, the only reason we were in the turf race last time was because the dirt race didn't go.
Okay.
And so we felt like we needed to get an allowance race into the horse going into this stake, and this was the only opportunity to run him. And even though it was grass, I think that, and he ran well, I think that his best surface is going to be dirt. When you look at the pedigree, the Speightstown have an AP Indy mare, and the fact that he ran so well the one time on the dirt, I actually think dirt is his preferred surface.
Well, you say you wanted to get that race in, and the turf was available. Was that with this stakes race, the Sugar Bowl, in mind?
Absolutely. I mean, if there had been a dirt option, we would have gone in the dirt race, but it did. Like I say, it didn't fill. The only option we had was the sprint on the grass, and so we took it just to get a little more experience into the horse. And
I assume you're happy with the way he's coming into the race, because I'm looking at the form here. The 47 and change workout was the second best of 148, so it looks like he's on his toes.
The horse is training well. He looks great, doing well, and in that 5.5 turf sprint, my other horse, Credit Swap, was the horse that won the race, and Credit Swap kind of drifted out a little bit in the lane, not by not because the rider was doing it, but the horse was a little green, and he drifted out right in front of this horse's path. And had he not, Assemblyman might have won that race. So, like I say, I think Assemblyman's coming into this race in good shape.
Yeah, as I pulled up you remind me, as I pulled up the replay, didn't the stewards take a look at that?
They did. They did.
And, how does that work for you when you have both horses?
I just kept my mouth shut and let the stewards decide, because obviously as long as one of them won it, I was going to be happy. So it didn't matter.
All right, as I said, you have some nice horses on the undercard as well, so let's just hit on a couple of those and give folks some thoughts. The opening race on Saturday at the Fairgrounds, an optional claimer, non-winners of one other than, and you have Tackett in here. We're going to take a look at the nice maiden breaker from November 24th. Tackett's going to be the number 8 horse, really on the lead all the way around. The career debut up at Laurel was a third-place finish. That was 6 furlongs. This race we're looking at a mile and 70 at the Fairgrounds, and as I say, a nice win, nice daylight win on the front end. Did he benefit from the experience in the career debut, or was it he really wanted the 2 turns, or a combination of the 2?
Well, this is a horse that he's a big, tall, rangy 2-year-old colt, big stride. We knew that 2 turns was going to be what he wanted to do in the long run, but we needed to get a race into him, and this is another situation where there really wasn't a 2-turn race for him. He was ready to run, so we just went ahead and ran him the 6 furlong race that day. And Fergal Lynch got off him that day and said, you know, I think this horse has a big future, and when he stretches out, he's going to be tough. And then you saw what he did the first time going around 2 turns. He was very impressive and drew off really easily.
Yeah, Tackett 8-5 in that opener Saturday at the Fairgrounds. So looking for good things there. And moving on to race number 2, Cypress Point. We're going to take a look at a couple of starts, or the second start for this one. That was on November 18th. It was on the turf, and it was a close-up second-place finish. Cypress Point will be the number 1 horse. The winner will be the number 8, Play On. There was a little bumping in here as well late, but this was a nice second-place finish. And again, went from the dirt to the turf. Was this another situation of the turf race was all that was available because we're going back to the dirt on Saturday?
Well, this was a filly that we thought was going to have some, she had forestry on the bottom, and we thought that there was turf in the pedigree. So we actually were looking for the grass for her. She ran well on both surfaces, actually. And the fact that, this is an opportunity to get her back in on the dirt. We're not really sure which is her preferred surface. I mean, I think she ran similar races in both turf and dirt. And if you watched at the Fairgrounds yesterday, the winner of that race, Play On, came back to win the allowance, the A other than in her next start. So I think Cypress Point is very live on either surface, but tomorrow we're on the dirt.
Yeah, Cypress Point in the second race at Fairgrounds. And Mike, before we let you go, I want to go back a few weeks and catch up because November 24th out at Del Mar, I had John Lees, the paddock commentator, on that morning. We were talking to Jimmy Durante, and he brought up Elsa. And I kind of looked as he was talking, and I said, you know what, as I looked down at the past performances, we're right down the road from Saratoga. We had the chance to see her run third in the Bolton Landing behind Stillwater Cove and Chelsea Cloisters. Subsequently, Chelsea Cloisters was a good second in that Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint. And I thought, you know what, Elsa might be interesting. So we're going to take a look at the stretch run here of the Jimmy Durante. Number 3, Elsa, does get it done at a nice 11-1. Now, again, this was out at Del Mar. What was the thought process to send her across country to try this stakes race?
Well, this is a filly that we had only had the opportunity to sprint up to that point. We were looking to stretch her out. There weren't any real good options at the Fairgrounds, so we felt like it was worth the trip. We've always liked her. She broke her maiden very impressively at Laurel in her first start, and then came back against, top horses, like you said, Chelsea Cloisters. She came back at Saratoga and ran a really game third, going 6 furlongs on the turf at Saratoga. So we knew she had the class to make the trip, and we really thought that the 2 turns was going to help her. And when I saw 11-1, I can only tell you that I was at the window.
I was right with you because, as I say, we were talking with John Lees that morning, and he brought the horse up. And the more I looked, I thought, you know what, I'm kind of – so I was on board right with you, and that was a nice $24 and change. But I see I looked up on Equibase. I see last Saturday she had a work. What's going to be the game plan next for Elsa?
Well, they're talking about since they don't have a really good 3-year-old filly or colt turf program at the fairgrounds. I've talked them into possibly writing a overnight stake that would be coming up sometime in January. So we're looking at that, and then there's a stake at Gulfstream on the turf going 2 turns that we're considering also. So she'll either run at the fairgrounds or at Gulfstream in her next start. And then from there, we've got a lot of options all spring and summer with really good turf racing for 3-year-old fillies. So we'll have plenty of good options for her.
We hope to see her back up at Saratoga.
Sure, absolutely.
Michael, again, wish you a lot of good luck Saturday and going forward with Elsa as well. And always this time of year, I want to wish you and yours and everybody involved with the stable a happy holidays and a Merry Christmas.
Well, absolutely. Same to you. And again, thank you very much for having me on the show. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Good luck on Saturday. Michael Stidham. Yesterday, and again, we updated things. Certainly, if you were watching Fairgrounds earlier this week, the weather was a little bit dicey, as it has been all over the country the past few months. But according to our friend Joe Kristufek earlier in the show, Friday windy and sunny, and Saturday going to be a nice day as well. So we'll keep our fingers crossed that everything plays out that way on Saturday afternoon, that great stakes card at the fairgrounds. All right, we'll take our next break. When we come back, a little recap of some of the top action from the racing year 2018. Stay tuned.
50 yards, heavily poised. Here's the line. One Dreamer wins and scores a huge front-running upset under Gary Stevens. Heavily prized was second. You have just witnessed a felony.
All right, we're ready. Anytime? 3, 2, 1. Good morning and welcome to Racing Across America on this Saturday morning. I'm Seth Merrow. Thanks for joining us. Thanks also to our friends at Gulfstream Park for their sponsorship. Gulfstream Park, champions start here. It is a interesting Saturday across the country with some very, very good stakes racing down at the fairgrounds. We will be talking about that this morning. Mike Stidham, the trainer, has some nice stakes runners and some nice runners on the undercard as well. We'll hit on those with him in a little bit. We'll kick things off, however, talking with our friend Joe Kristufek, paddock commentator down at the fairgrounds, as well as Churchill. But he left Churchill after their season and headed down. He's now in New Orleans. We'll talk to him in just a moment, but also coming up towards the end of the program, the NTRA put out their nominations for the moment of the year, and I thought we'll kind of go over those at the end of the show because it's interesting, and you can vote certainly, but just it's interesting also because they kind of encapsulate some of the highlights of the year. They hit on some nice races, some of the people who have passed, some of the industry stories. So I thought it was a nice way to kind of encapsulate some of the highlights of the year. That'll come up towards the end of the program. But to kick things off, our friend Joe Kristufek, Fairgrounds paddock commentator, and as I say, a big day of stakes action. We hit on all of the stakes with Joe right next. Right next. Let me, wait, that was horrible. Right next. That's not even, I'll just, fuck. All right, let me start again. That was bad right from the beginning. Yeah. 3, 2, 1. Good morning and welcome to Racing Across America on this Saturday morning. I'm Seth Merrow. Happy to have you join us on this Saturday and happy to also thank our friends at Gulfstream Park for their sponsorship. Gulfstream Park, champions start here. Nice Saturday of action across the country, but is highlighted by stakes galore, actually, down at the fairgrounds. A really nice card down at the fairgrounds, and we'll hit on some of that with trainer Mike Stidham in a little bit later. He has some stakes performers. He also has some nice runners on the undercard as well. A little bit after that, we'll do kind of a recap of racing action for the year. The NTRA put out their nominations for Moments of the Year this week, and you can go and vote, certainly, but I thought we'll go over the moments because they kind of encapsulate some of the big racing stories of the year, some of the big races, some of the people who have passed during the year, some of the industry stories. There are 12 nominations, but again, within that, some of the bigger stories of the year have been hit on. So I thought we'd do that towards the end of the program, take a look at those moments of the year that the NTRA put out this week. And we'll start things out with our friend Joe Kristufek. Again, a big day of stakes action down at the fairgrounds. Joe, of course, normally at Churchill Downs, but when their meet ends, the winter time, he spends the winter down in New Orleans at fairgrounds, and you see him before all the races. And tomorrow, fuck, I want to start again. Man, oh man, I shouldn't be on tape. Tape's just a bad thing. All right, now I got it. I'm good now. Good morning and welcome to Racing Across America on this Saturday morning. I'm Seth Merrow. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to our friends also at Gulfstream for their sponsorship. Gulfstream Park, champions start here. Nice racing at Gulfstream, nice racing in New York, but certainly nice racing on this Saturday at Fairgrounds. And we're going to hit on that with a couple of our guests. Michael Stidham, the trainer, has some nice runners in the stakes. He also has some nice runners on the undercard. We'll talk to him a little bit later on. Also, we're going to hit on the NTRA Moments of the Year. Dozen of them that kind of encapsulate some of the bigger stories, big races, some people who passed from the racing industry news. So you can certainly go vote, but I just thought we'd take a look at those NTRA Moments of the Year nominations as just an overall kind of review of 2018 racing. We're going to start the show off, however, with our friend Joe Kristufek. He's the paddock commentator down at the fairgrounds. They have a great stakes card today. We will hit on all of that with Joe Kristufek up next. Damn. That was way tougher than it should have been.
All right, all set?
Yep.
3, 2, 1, go.
Thanks again to Joe Kristufek for that stakes preview. Lots of good action, not just the stakes, but the undercard as well. We'll hit on some of that also up next with Michael Stidham. But before that, a break. We'll be back right after this. Yep.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to Racing Across America on this Saturday morning. Again, Saturday afternoon features nice stakes action from the fairgrounds. Trainer Michael Stidham has three, actually has more than three. He's in 3 stakes races, but in one of them he's got a couple of horses. He also has some nice runners on the undercard. We'll hit on all of that. And his winner a couple of weeks ago out of Del Mar, Elsa, in the Jimmy Durante. We'll get an update on her next start, all with Michael Stidham. Up next.
All right, all set?
Yep.
3, 2, 1, go.
Thanks to trainer Michael Stidham for taking the time. Take that yesterday. And again, we updated things. Certainly if you were watching Fairgrounds earlier this week, the weather was a little bit dicey, as it has been all over the country the past few months. But according to our friend Joe Kristufek earlier in the show, Friday windy and sunny, and Saturday going to be a nice day as well. So we'll keep our fingers crossed that everything plays out that way on Saturday afternoon, that great stakes card at the fairgrounds. All right, we'll take our next break. When we come back, a little recap of some of the top action from the racing year 2018. Stay tuned. All right, so here I got to figure times. I'm going. Okay. All right. All right. Yep. Welcome back to Racing Across America. As promised at the top of the show, just a little recap of some of the highlights of the 2018 racing year via the NTRA Moments of the Year. And again, they've been doing this for the last few years. You can go to the NTRA website. I have a link over on Equidaily as well. You can link and vote for your favorite moment of the year. They have a dozen of them, a dozen nominees. And as I said earlier, I think they kind of encapsulate some of the bigger racing stories. Not everything, but I thought it was a good kind of overview of the racing year. Some of the more important races, some of the important people who unfortunately have passed away, some industry news and more. So I thought it was a good way, again, just to, as we wind things down in 2018, kind of hit on some of the highlights perhaps. And one of the nominees was a race we were at with our OTB, Capital OTB TV On the Road program, which has been very nice this year. But we started things out with the Pegasus down at Gulfstream. We'll be back in 2019 in about a month. But the 2018 Pegasus, it was the final start for Gunrunner. And again, that's one of the NTRA moments of the year. And deservedly so. This was a really nice performance. And Gunrunner is just one of those horses that I think demonstrates why we always were disappointed. And Gunrunner is the number 10 horse here under Florent Giraud, winning over West Coast. Gunavera runs third. But again, number 10, Gunrunner, getting it done in the career finale and in fine fashion. 2.5 lengths over West Coast, who's 10.5 in front of Gunavera. I caught up with Steve Asmussen as he walked out of the winner's circle, and I said, just give me a couple of words. And he said, legendary, baby. And it certainly was a very impressive performance. But again, he's one of those horses that just reminds us why, excuse me, it's a little bit disappointing to see them go to the breeding shed after the 3-year-old season, like a Justify or some of these other horses, even after a 4-year-old season. But Gunrunner, as a 3-year-old, you know, we go back to his 3-year-old season, ran third in the Travers, second in the Pennsylvania Derby, then winds up his 3-year-old season winning the Clark. And as he gets into the 4-year-old season, and certainly later in the 4-year-old season, that's where he kind of comes into his own. As a 4-year-old, he wins the Stephen Foster, he wins the Whitney, he wins the Woodward, and then the Breeders' Cup Classic. And kudos to the Stronach Group for the Pegasus idea. I mean, there are some things that maybe could be tweaked with it, but overall, the last few runnings since they put it into effect has brought horses that otherwise would be moving into retirement. We get one more race. So we probably wouldn't have seen Gunrunner as a 5-year-old except for the Pegasus. So we got that one more run. But as I say, you look at that streak, the Foster, the Whitney, the Woodward, the Breeders' Cup Classic, and the Pegasus. Really, Gunrunner was getting to be the best of his career just as he left. So, as I say, it's always disappointing to see him leave his 3-year-olds and go to the breeding shed. I understand financially and economically why it happens, but you look at a horse like Gunrunner and you just see him getting good at the end of that 4-year-old season, into the 5-year-old season, and you wish he had stuck around as a 5-year-old or maybe a 6-year-old. But again, the economics, and we did get to see his 4-year-old season, and that race as a 5-year-old, the Pegasus. So again, it was a nice way to kind of kick off the year. We started and ended. We started the year with the Pegasus, but it was the end of the career for Gunrunner. But that was a nice little, certainly, performance to put at the top of the list for the nominees of the NTRA Moment of the Year. Also, this was kind of funny. I talked about this earlier on the Handicappers Report with Brian Nadeau. This was certainly an industry story that deserves to be on this list, and that's the legalization of sports betting. But then there's another entrant that is the sports book at Monmouth. And to me, these should have been put in one category, because I don't know whether voters, it's a big story, and as I say, worthy of being on the list. I just don't know whether it's going to be the kind of category that attracts voters. And so then, you know, if they're going to have trouble getting voters anyway with things like Gunrunner and Justify and Diversify, well, you don't want to split the vote. But here we're seeing a couple of pictures of the Monmouth Sportsbook. And again, sports betting becoming legal, big boost for the industry potentially. Monmouth was one of the first to jump on it. So yeah, those are big stories. I'm not denying both of those. What was it? Probably 3 or 4 days after Monmouth opened their sports book, we were joined by one of the VPs at Monmouth and talked a little bit about it. They were excited then, and I think it's kind of played out nicely for them. Still, I think, you know, the jury isn't fully in, and obviously jurisdictions around the country haven't all jumped on the bandwagon, including New York. We'll see how that plays out in 2019. But that was an important issue for the racing industry, and so I fully see why it was included. I just found it interesting that there was 2 different entries with the sports betting category as part of the moments of the year. Clearly, and I think, in my opinion, this is the moment of the year. This will be the one that probably will wind up winning in the voting. And again, you can go to the NTRA website, you can go to my Equidaily website and click there if you'd like to make your vote. But Justify winning the Triple Crown. We're going to take a look at the Belmont Stakes here. Another Capital OTB on the road visit. We were down there to watch the Triple Crown be picked up by Justify, Mike Smith, and Bob Baffert. Justify, the number 1 horse here. Nice late run from Gronkowski, the number 6 horse, who impressed in this race and had high hopes coming out of this in subsequent starts, but didn't quite live up to that. Gronkowski, of course, having gotten off to the really poor start in this race, and as the number 6 horse to get up to run second, a good second. Again, there were high hopes that he didn't quite live up to, and Justify didn't live up to our hopes going forward coming out of this race, because this wound up to be the last race of his career. But all of that said, a horse winning the Triple Crown, excuse me, going 6 for 6 in the career, and starting the career on February 18th and winding up with that race we just saw on June 9th. Just a spectacular, 4-5 month run that was just kind of really mind-boggling and unprecedented, and a great training feat by Bob Baffert, who has continued to kind of put his name in the pantheon of great horse racing trainers. But Justify, as I say, I think his Triple Crown will be one of the top vote getters, and I think the top vote getter, I think by a wide margin, but we'll see. Of the racing performances that tie in with another story, as I said, excuse me, part of this list also mentions a couple of passings, or includes a couple of passings, and that's with Diversify in the Whitney. August 4th up at Saratoga, Diversify's the number 6 horse here under Irad Ortiz. Off of that long weather delay, they come back, they get it done. Diversify takes them all the way around, wins by 3.5. Mind Your Biscuits, the number 4, a gutsy second. But as I say, this ties into the other story of a passing of one of the players in the racing game in 2018. Trainer Rick Violette, subsequently a couple of months later, passed away. Steve Bick and I, on Sunday morning here on the network, the day after this victory, had Rick Violette on. You can go find that on the Capital TV YouTube channel. It was a lot of fun to talk to Rick and talk a little bit about Diversify and that win and the situation with the rain delay that was a little bit unprecedented, and a nice win over Mind Your Biscuits. And it ties in another nice story, certainly in our neck of the woods, and that was the prominence in New York breds, with the first and second by Diversify and Mind Your Biscuits in the Whitney, a prestigious race like that. A couple of New York breds, legitimate too. I mean, we're talking the 8-5 choice and the 3-1 second choice. So it wasn't like a quirky couple of New York breds 1-2. They were expected to run there. Mind Your Biscuits with the performance in Dubai this year. The nice New York bred sale at Saratoga, and a couple of other really nice New York bred performances throughout the Saratoga meet. It was, and beyond as well, but it was a nice year for the New York breds also. So as I say, some of these NTRA moments tied into other news stories that were worth taking a look at. I think they did a little filler. Well, before I get to the filler, one more thing I want to talk about, one other news story in a passing that is on the moments list, the passing of Cot Campbell. And that, again, a worthy addition to the Moments of the Year list. I don't know whether folks will tend to, I think it's a sad kind of a thing, and I don't know whether people will vote for that necessarily as the Moment of the Year, but it's worth putting on a list like this and recognizing, and see Cot there just this year as he was voted into the Hall of Fame up at Saratoga as one of the pillars. That's Cot and his wife and his daughter and his granddaughter, and deservedly so. Cot Campbell kind of changed the game, and his Dogwood was one of the first partnership groups in the racing game, and so it was great to see Cot get into the Hall of Fame, deservedly so. And then subsequently, as the year progressed along, he passed away. But certainly one of the prominent guys in the game over the last 20 years or more with his Dogwood stable. So again, it was nice to include him on the list. As I say, the list is kind of a little bit of everything from the year, and I thought it was worth taking a look at. I'll just hit on, I'll tell the guys in the control room, I'll pull up one of the stakes races. And as I say, it looked like they filled out the list a little bit with deservedly some nice performances, but they had 4 performances from the Breeders' Cup. They're all nice. They're all deserving of recognition. They all belong on the list. But I don't know, as I say, I think that Triple Crown for Justify is going to lay over all of these. But the race I'll have the guys pull up out of that list, and it includes game winner in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. That's a moment of the year for them. Monomoy Girl in the Distaff. Congratulations to Brad Cox. And there is game winner in the Juvenile. Accelerate in the Breeders' Cup Classic, but I'll have you pull up next Enable in the Breeders' Cup Turf. That's, to me, the one that kind of stands out in the group because she comes over from Europe out of a win in the ARC and gets it done in the Breeders' Cup Turf. And again, we're watching game winner here in the Juvenile for Bob Baffert. Going to be fun to watch him next year as a 3-year-old. But again, if next you can just pull up the Enable win in the Breeders' Cup Turf. She'll be the number 2 horse. Frankie Dettori. And again, she was just a fun story. And it was a fun story also in that she gets it done and running right behind her, another European Magical, another little 3-year-old filly there. As Enable had the big 3-year-old filly season last year, Magical this year with the second to Enable, well clear of the third-place finisher, Sadler's Joy. And here they are, Enable. And subsequently they said, we're coming back next year with Enable. So she's a nice story from 2018 that plays into some excitement in 2019 as well. 2-time ARC winner, gets it done in the Breeders' Cup Turf. Accelerate in the Breeders' Cup Classic was also one of those race moments of the year. So again, they tossed in 4 Breeders' Cup races on the list, all again deserving. But as I say, it seemed like a little bit of filler as compared to some of the other moments of the year. And again, it would be hard to choose one of those over the others as opposed to some of these other single events. Again, I'm tilting towards the Triple Crown with Justify. Finally, a couple of jockey notes. Gary Stevens retires is on the list. I pulled up Equibase stats for Gary Stevens. 29,000 plus starts, over 5,000 wins, over $250 million, $258 million in career earnings. You can pull up his stats on Equibase. He was the Eclipse jockey in 1998, went in the Hall of Fame in 1997. He's won the Kentucky Derby with Silver Charm. He's won the Kentucky Derby with Winning Colors, Belmont Stakes with Thunder Gulch and Victory Gallop, among other Triple Crown performances, and a list of Breeders' Cup wins as well. So Gary Stevens leaving the saddle now for probably the 3rd time. He's retired and come back a few times, but this time he's having some back surgery and it's a physical thing. I don't think, I'm virtually certain Gary Stevens will not be back, so we bid him adieu and wish him well in his retirement. And we also wish well in a continued riding career for John Velasquez. His 6,000 win is again a moment of the year. He just had that just a few weeks ago. Notably and correctly, it was on a Todd Pletcher horse, and that was right down at Aqueduct, as I say, just within the past, 2 or 3 weeks. John Velasquez, 32,000 plus starts. Again, now just over 6,000 wins. But pulled up his stats as well. Excuse me, John Velasquez, Hall of Fame in 2012. Eclipse Award winner in 2005 and 2004. He's also a Derby winner with Animal Kingdom and Always Dreaming. Belmont with Rags to Riches, and like Stevens, a long list of nice performances in the Breeders' Cup as well. So, again, the NTRA dozen nominees for the moment of the year. You can vote if you'd like to. Go to the NTRA website or my Equidaily website, and you'll find a link there to go make a vote. But otherwise, as I say, it was a nice list that kind of encompassed various things that I think give us a look back at some of the highlights of the year and just some reminders on what a fun year it was in 2018. All right, I'm going to wrap things up. Want to thank Joe Kristufek for his visit earlier. Michael Stidham also. Again, a big stakes day down at the fairgrounds. Do want to remind you that there are some closings of our branches and whatnot over the next week or so with the holidays coming up. Clubhouse Racebook on Sunday. You can certainly stop in and watch all the football action and NFL Sunday here as the season winds down. All the football, all the racing, Sundays at the Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central Avenue in Albany. But this Sunday, we close a little early at 6:30. Monday and Tuesday, Christmas Eve and Christmas, The branches will be closed. Racing obviously a little light or Christmas non-existent, so we're taking those 2 days off. As far as the branches are closed Monday and Tuesday, Christmas Eve and Christmas. Next week, New Year's Eve, December 31st, branches have their normal hours, but cleats and clubhouse close at 7:30. That's Monday, New Year's Eve. And Tuesday, New Year's Day, Tuesday, January 1st, the branches are open at normal hours. But the branches that are normally closed on Tuesday, they'll be open on New Year's Day because there'll be some holiday racing. Clubhouse closes at 9 on New Year's Day, and cleats closes at 7:30. All right, that takes you through that information. And I will let you tell me, the guys are signed, because they...
Tell them on TV the Christmas special.
Oh, I was going to mention that. I had that on my list, although I may have forgotten it. But I have been reminded by the guys in the control room, and it is worth reminding. Christmas Day, obviously no racing. But, as I mentioned earlier, our on-the-road OTB shows were a lot of fun again this year. Florida Derby, we talked to Todd Pletcher, who won with Audible. We also talked to Roddy Valenti that day, and Coach Rox won the Gulfstream Park Oaks up at Woodbine for the Queen's Plate. We talked with Mark Cassian. Wonder Godot won that race. So we had a lot of great visits to some of the racetracks, and that is part of a holiday special that's coming up on Christmas Day. Our man Mick Richards put it together along with the folks in the control room, Brian and Dino, and again, it kind of puts together, I think Mick said a couple hours worth of highlights from not only our 6 hours? Oh, 6 hours of our on-the-road trips, and obviously in the studio, and importantly up at Saratoga as well, where we do some fun work during the summertime with all the biggest names in racing, just a golf cart ride away. So again, if you're in between the meals, the turkey dinner, and then a little bit later the hot turkey sandwich, or you're waiting for the dinner to be cooked, turn on OTB on Christmas Day. All day long we'll be looping that holiday special that recaps some of the better Capital OTB TV programming from 2018. Keep your mind on that Christmas Day, Capital OTB TV for our holiday recap special. All right. I'm going to step out, and not only am I stepping out for this morning, but won't be back in until next Friday. Live programming returns on Wednesday afternoon. Mike and Sully will be in Wednesday and Thursday. I'm out to visit the relatives in Arkansas for the Christmas holiday, so we're going to take a little break the remainder of Saturday and Sunday as well. As I say, live programming returns on Wednesday. I'll be back on Friday. On behalf of myself, everybody here at OTB, we wish you and yours a happy holidays and a Merry Christmas. We'll see you next time. All right, that's going to go long.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off-Track Betting.